Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome back, folks. Is everyone here? Well, we'll start it off. Ivana, are you with us?
I am, hello.
All right. Well, welcome aboard, everybody. Our next panel is with Yvonne Yaron, who's from Able Cine, and here to talk to us about rental and purchase and COVID protocols and cutting edge technology in the age of all this madness we have out there. I'll basically just kick it off with this. I've worked with Able in the past myself through HBO and such. I'm an independent filmmaker. I know there's some independent filmmakers here with us today and some veterans who are connected. In terms of what's available to us now, what can a place like Able provide? What are the benefits to renting versus buying your own gear? Can you do both through some place like Able? We can start off there and then branch off to what kind of technology is available and what, if there's anything has changed since the pandemic and so on. So if you can just go from there, Ivana, please.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be with all of you today. Yes, hi, I'm Ivana. I am currently at Able Cine. I'm the rental operations manager. I'm here in the department. So I'll talk to you about rentals and gear in general, and hopefully some of you with a lot of experience with gear, and then maybe some who are new to this, I can give you some good information for today. So I'd like to start off, even though I'm in the rentals department, I want to talk a little about rentals versus sales. In what scenario would you like to buy gear instead of renting gear if you were looking to start a project in the near future? So for sales, it would be a good option if you could see yourself using a camera or a piece of gear over and over again for your projects. You can have access to that gear that you have purchased whenever you want versus rental when you have to see what's available and work on the schedule. So I think that also cameras are very inexpensive these days. So I have this Komodo behind me, which is a $6,000 camera. It's a cinema camera. So if you could see yourself making an investment with a piece of gear or cameras, that is a good option to look into if you are going to do a bunch of projects in the future. If you have a group of people that you know that you are going to work with and you would like to have access to gear whenever, I think sales is a great option if you could see yourself doing that, and you can do investments and pay off the gear as well. So I think that's a great option if you could see yourself having gear and owning it in the future. So another thing is, if you're not sure where to begin with technology and cameras, I also would suggest that you could look into some training classes where you can learn about different cameras and different gear. So a place like Able Cine or any other kind of rental company, you can look and see what kind of training classes they have on cameras, or even if you're more into like post-production and trying to figure out how to finish out your project, you can do training classes and do those classes with, maybe if you're a shooter yourself, or if you work with someone, a DP, and want to learn more about what kind of cameras you'd be interested in and what kind of, there's so many options, resolution, media, there's, gear comes to a lot of little things. So I would also suggest that it would be good to try and find some training classes and look into gear that you don't necessarily see all the time. And so that's something that we also provide at Able Cine, so you could do that as well. And in this day of, COVID and things that the last year, I mean, a lot of our procedures are very similar to where they were before. You can rent gear and buy gear through us in the office, and you can reach out virtually, but also if you wanted to get more hands-on experience, you could reach out to Able Cine or any other company that is doing in training classes. And there's probably going to be some protocol as to COVID, but for the most part, I think people are trying to get in the same room together again. And so that's really lovely. And you can experience that now here or anywhere that you're looking to learn more about gear in general. And so I'll talk more about rentals, kind of dive into the rental department here. And so if you think like, I don't see myself owning gear, but I do see myself shooting more stuff in the future or working with someone to get gear so I can make my films and direct, and or even if you're a screenwriter, you want to link up with people and create your own projects. Rentals is a great avenue for that because you don't have to commit long term. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to upkeep your sales equipment. That's another thing, is like when you rent, that rental company is already like QCing and maintaining the gear, so it looks good. So you know that you're getting like high quality gear when you're renting. And so yeah, I think there's about 6 points that I want to bring up when you are deciding to hit up a rental company and try and see if that's a good avenue to grab gear. The first point is a budget. I think it's good to approach a rental house and know exactly how much you want to spend. If you're making a doc, if you're doing a 1 day shoot, you're doing, a short film, or something long form that is going to take a month, 30 days to do. I think it's good to come to the rental house and say, this is my budget for the projects that I am working on. So once you break that down, the rental house can kind of also help you figure out what gear could fit into what your needs and what you're looking for as well. I think that after knowing your budget and also learning, how long do you need the gear, your schedule, you'll need insurance as well. And I think there'll be a deeper dive into insurance, but it's good to know that if you are renting gear, Able City provides like an option of, here, we don't give gear, we don't give insurance ourselves, but here is a company that you can use to get a COI insurance, certificate of insurance, and then you can put that towards your rental. So most rental houses are very helpful when it comes to insurance because we want you to take the gear. So they'll help you find a way to get, your insurance, your paperwork, everything you need. I know that sometimes it can be daunting to kind of get all your paperwork together and making sure that you have everything you need, like credit card authorization form and stuff. But yeah, they're very helpful as far as figuring out like what I need to bring to the table when I'm looking to rent something at a rental house. And sometimes if you approach the rental house and you're say, I need a camera, but I'm not quite sure what would be best for me. Most of the time they're really like, here at Able City, we're like helpful in figuring out what kind of camera gear that you're looking for, like what would work best. It would be something smaller that's behind me, like a Komodo, or if you're looking for, an Arri Mini a camera. And so we can kind of talk through a little bit of what your ideal situation is, like how big of a package it would be, how small it would be, something that would fit inside a budget. And so if you come in kind of having an idea of what you're looking for, the rental agents are usually really helpful in trying to figure out what kind of package they should put together for you. And so another thing you might want to consider is like, are you a one person, kind of team? Do you have more people on your team? Are you shooting on your own versus are you shooting with a DP and an AC? I think that's also something to consider because I think as filmmakers, sometimes we think like we can just try and do everything on our own and we'll make it work somehow. Whereas sometimes, especially with gear, it's really nice to have someone like an AC or someone next to you to kind of help you go through the items. It kind of makes sure you have everything you need. So when you go onto the field, when you're shooting your documentary or shooting your narrative, you have all the items that you're looking for because there's so many small things that you take out when you are grabbing gear from a rental house. And so that leads me, after you've rented gear, leads me to like M&D or L&D, which is something that to consider after you return gear is, missing and damages, make sure you have everything, or maybe there's something on set that you weren't expecting. So kind of budgeting and getting yourself prepared for that after you have done a rental at a rental house. And so also that's kind of like the big picture of like how to get started at a rental house, like what you'll need and what I like would suggest as far as like what to come to the table with when you are looking to grab gear from a place. And I know that sometimes you may not even know what you want to shoot with, like cameras and lenses and such. And so rental houses are actually pretty, like Able Cine are open to having tests. So you could call a rental house and say, hey, I am looking for, this type of camera and this type of lens. I'm not quite sure. Or I know I really want to shoot with an Alexa Mini or, a C300 or, this Komodo or any other camera, but I'm not sure what lenses that I want. Because, you want to kind of see what you're getting before you just take everything out into the field sometimes. And so you can hit up the rental house and ask like, hey, what is your procedures on doing tests? And like, do you ask for a fee to do a test? Or I know that most rental houses are more open to doing tests inside their facilities if you do like a future rental with them. So if you're like very like, I have a project, I'm greenlit, I'm ready to go, I need to get some gear. That's probably maybe that could be the first option is being like, hey, I have a somewhat idea of what I want to shoot with. Can I do a test? So I tell people all the time they're welcome to come and do tests here and take a look at different filters or lenses and other cameras if they are looking just to find exactly what they're looking for. And then also kind of set themselves up for post production. You have all the media that you're looking for, and then, who's editing it and like figuring out like if you're getting all the right codecs and such. And yeah, I think that's a big part of shooting is knowing exactly everything that you have at the table when you grab it from a rental house. So yeah, that's all of my points for getting started at a rental house, and then I'll talk a little bit about the Komodo that's behind me. I'm sorry it's so dark. I tried to lit this office as much as possible, but it's like so dark in here. But yes, this is. I wanted to show off the red Komodo today because it is one of our newer red cameras. I am not a sponsor for red, but it's just something of one of the newer, smaller cameras that we have in house. And what I like about it is that it is very small. It's like my hand goes over the camera. Like it is a tiny, just for reference of it's a very tiny camera. It is 2 pounds without all the stuff on it. Right now I have a little zoom lens and a battery on the back and then a tripod that it's mounted on. But it's one of these cameras that is very affordable in my mind. It is 6 grand to purchase. A lot less if you're looking to rent it, but it's 6 grand. It shoots 6K. It does 120 frames at 2K, and the dynamic range is all there from a red camera as well. And on the front, there's this RF mount that Canon has made specifically in their company. And I guess like Red and Canon like had like some sort of like pairing and like, hey, let's do this thing together because it takes Canon batteries and a Canon RF mount. But that RF mount, you could put a PL mount or an EF mount onto that RF. So those adapters, so say if you already own Canon lenses or like, I know Greg, you mentioned the Rokinons, those are EF mount, like if you own your own lenses or a DP or someone you work with already has lenses, it's an easy camera to adapt to because it has those two adapters and you can decide which lenses you want to use with it. And yeah, it's just really compact. There's the Canon batteries on the back and then the CFast media that you usually find with ARRI cameras like Alexa Minis and Amiras. That's what the type of media that the camera takes. And so, yeah, I threw a zoom lens on here. If you're shooting maybe a documentary, maybe you're shooting by yourself, you're a one-person team, a zoom lens might be best because you're not having to swap lenses and kind of get different looks. So if you get your camera, your lens, you just built it up small and compact and you like run around with it or you do your whole doc by yourself or maybe you're shooting b-roll or whatever it is that you're doing. It's a really nice setup if you're looking to do that. I mean, any really camera that is not super large like a Venice or an Amira, you can kind of take that and compact it and kind of make it your own like shooting camera that you can do on your own. But if you have a team as well and you find yourself with a DP and some ACs, you can grab some prime lenses to go with the zoom lenses. And yeah, that's the whole setup right behind me. And yeah, that's basically all my spiel at the moment.
Curious. So you mentioned that the Komodos, let's say 6,000 plus.
Mhm.
If you outfit it with beyond the lenses, if you outfit it with a couple of rigging pieces, maybe tripod and so on. So theoretically, with the basic lens package, maybe very simple. And you folks obviously can advise on this: a zoom lens. So as you're saying on a documentary or a very small, low budget fiction feature or project, you have adaptability there. Um, or a small set of primes, again, simple primes. You're talking about maybe 10,000 plus, 10,000 to $12,000. But in terms of renting that whole setup, what, if you can give a guesstimate, and this could be applicable to other places, what would be your, for like a day rate, a long weekend rate, a week rate? How would that work? And what would be the process there?
Yeah, so say that you wanted to take a package such as this over the weekend, we would consider that a 1 day rental. So that's a 1 day rate. I forget how much the Komodo goes for, but it's probably somewhere in like the 400 range plus the lens is probably also 400 as well. And then if you get like small batteries, like an onboard battery and a monitor, you're adding another like 100 or 200 or so on top of that. So a weekend rental could be pretty inexpensive if you are just taking it out on a Friday and returning on a Monday morning. So yes, the rental itself would be a lot more inexpensive than sales purchasing the camera and the lens itself. So
I can't see
yeah,
myself anymore. It's going off.
so yeah, it would break down that way and it would be like daily rates. And so you could, when you email or reach out to a rental house and say, hi, I'm looking to have a camera package from Thursday to Tuesday, the rental agent would actually break down how many days that is and then kind of negotiate like a discount or a rate for everything that you're looking for that amount of time. And so Able Cine and other rental houses are really good at working with you. I think we default start at a 40% discount, and we can kind of talk more about like the package deal and potentially if it's like a reoccurring rental. That's also something that we're very used to doing is, say you have a production on 1 week and then 3 weeks later you have another one, like you're doing a series or something. We can set that up and have it reoccurring. So yeah, the rental agent would be able to help, set up the daily rate and get all that going for budget.
So, as you mentioned before, I know, and especially given the potential, pandemic ramifications here, I know there's a showroom in the past, but you mentioned there's a possibility for maybe test driving a camera, especially if you're unfamiliar with cameras, if you don't have a DP, if you're a newbie, you have a basic sense of shooting and such, but you want to try out something like the Komodo, and you're thinking about spending, like you said, maybe $3,000 for a weekend shoot. But you want to come in and test it without, is it costing money to come and test it? And given COVID protocols, do you have to like sign up ahead of time online, then come to your Tribeca location? How does it work?
Yeah, so at Able Cine currently we have just a COVID protocol form, just saying kind of like a basic 30 days, having symptoms and such, and we have you fill all that out either online beforehand or if you come into the office and you can fill it out when you're here in the office. And usually if you are looking to purchase a Komodo, the sales team could hit up our rental team and be like, hi, I have a potential sales client looking into potentially buying Komodo. Could we schedule a 2-hour time just to look at a Komodo on the showroom floor or on the rental floor, just so they can kind of get familiar with it, see if they like the camera, and can move forward from there. And that's something we've done many times in the past. If a sales client is pretty serious about like buying that camera, we can set that up and let someone kind of take a look through the camera menus and kind of see the camera. If we have it in rentals available that day, we can put that on the floor. And so that's something that we do here at Able, and maybe another place they can help set that up and see if the sales team and the rental team can work together to let you look at a camera if you're interested at all.
And it's great. You also have lights and entire package that you can provide for filmmakers. That's wonderful. I don't want to miss out on anyone who might have any questions. I know we don't have a truckload of time before our next panel. So if anyone wants to raise their hands, and I'll do my best to get to you folks. We'll keep it tight. If you'll just raise your hand now if you have any questions. And I'll look here. I'm looking virtually. I don't see any virtual hands up. Oh, I see one. James Duff. Hi, James. And
Jerry and Joe.
Duffs. Go ahead.
My question is, can you take the equipment overseas? You have a policy about that?
Yes, you can definitely take gear overseas. We've had people in the last couple months take rental gear across seas, or maybe they own the camera and they just need a lens to rent, so they can take their gear to. We have a dock in Israel right now, and they actually own most of their gear, but then they rented a few small items from us. So yeah, 100%, you're welcome to take it overseas. And if you do have to do a carnet for your gear, we can give serial numbers and give a list of what you're getting. I know that we have students who go overseas, and also any other filmmakers that go overseas, so we can definitely accommodate that.
All right. And so go ahead.
I have a hi, thanks so much. It's really interesting. I really appreciate your experience and sharing that with us. But so I've got a GH5 and a GH5S, and I'm a bit of a gearhead, so I kind of always love to jumping ship and moving up. And my budget wasn't really in the kind of red category, but this certainly is exciting. And our projects are typically 2 or 3 years long, so and it's pick up the camera and move, so it's definitely makes sense for us to purchase rather than rent. So a couple of questions. It's great that the lenses would marry over from with the mounts into the Komodo. Do you think I really like the image that we had shooting vlog on the GH5s. It was beautiful for us. It's enough for what we kind of want to do, but it is exciting to think about taking the next step up into a higher definition and quality. Would the GH5 marry quite well? Could we seamlessly move that footage if we were using something as a B-roll camera into the Komodo? And is the Komodo rough? We're either high up on a mountain or down in a river gorge or in the middle of Africa or somewhere like that. Is the Komodo pretty robust? And then also, could you just talk a little bit about the battery life on it? And then the last one would be what zoom lens do you have on that camera behind you? Sorry, a lot of questions, but interested in the upgrade potentially.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Jerry, for your question. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so moving, from a GH5 or another camera that you've been using in the past, I think it'd be worth grabbing some, because Red has a definite look, right? And then obviously Panasonic also has a definite look as well. But if you're shooting similar log, maybe you could put them together and sort of match them. Or maybe if you, like the Komodo's look and, maybe you incorporate that into a few of your shoots and see how that goes together. I can't see why, why not you would be able to try and match, a different camera to what you got going. But since you like it so much, I think it's worth maybe a test to see maybe if you even like what Red's looks at all, because when you go from different brand to brand, Red, Arri, Canon, Sony, they all, even though you shoot log, they do have still kind of like their own style to them. So I think that would be my suggestion, is maybe just seeing some footage from the Komodo and seeing if you like it at all, and then moving forward in that way. As far as the robustness, yeah, it's a robust camera. It's it's carbon fiber, so that's what makes it super light. But if you were going to take it into the mountains or anywhere, I think that it would hold up just as well as your GH5. I feel like that's a good comparison. I think people really like it because of its smallness, be able to throw it on a rig or throw it on, a car, or even you're just holding it and you're just running around with it. So I think that's the big appeal of it. But I feel like it would, Red is they've been around for a while. I feel like they're pretty robust in their cameras and what they've got going. So definitely could speak to that as well. I currently have an 18 to 35 Sigma zoom on there. So You know, that's just they've been really popular because they're full frame lenses too. And so I wanted to get a zoom that wasn't too large to show off to you guys, but something that could still, you know, that's not a prime lens, you know, like you see it and it's a zoom, but it doesn't look like a zoom, you know, like some zooms are like massive. So that's the Sigma, you know, class that I have going on with it right now. And I think to answer your last question about the battery life, I have a small AB like nano battery on the back, and it's a 98-watt battery. So I think when you go with that with no accessories or anything, you know, you got like about 50 minutes of runtime with one battery. So I know people tend to use like 2 at a time or buy 2, you know, to start off with. But the fact that you can put an AB battery on the back of the Komodo really can lend to a long life of like, you know, having the camera on and shooting with it.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for that question, Jerry. I think we have time for one more. Joe Brown, did you have a question?
I had one. I was able to look it up, but I guess I was just wondering about your locations because I think it's mostly like New York and LA. It looks like maybe Dallas or something too. Do you have programs where you go out into the? I mean, I guess with COVID right now you probably don't, but do you go out to other cities? You know, I'm in Denver.
Yeah, so we have Able City, New York, and we're currently located in Entry City in Brooklyn. And then we have a Chicago location, which is mostly our sales and customer service office. And then we have our Able City, LA, which is rentals, sales, service. We have a lot of different departments. We have an integration department. We have a training department. Yeah, we have a service department. So, you know, we're all very integrated as well. But we haven't visited out to any other states at the moment, but we do ship across the country, and we've also shipped like, you know, to Canada, and like we have a Puerto Rico shipment today. So we kind of can send our gear everywhere if you need anything, and we kind of specialize in. I think Mike touched on this last year on remote packages and such. So if you have something that's like sort of untraditional, where you're not just shooting with the camera and a talent in front of you, like if you need a remote setup, or we're also been diving into fiber multi-dime base station jobs or like live streaming jobs. So we kind of have some unique gear. So if you need anything like that and you think to reach out to Able City, we can definitely help figure out if it's a good fit or not.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
All right. We are going to, I think we're going to go just wrap this up and thank our wonderful guest, Ivana Yaron from Able City. And this is very, very informative. Thank you so much, Ivana. And we're going to move right into, yeah, you can't hear the applause, but near mine. I'm sharing theirs. We're going to move into our next panel in just a minute with Douglas Trumbull, legendary filmmaker and visual effects pioneer. And I think it's fitting. I think Doug's going to talk about cameras and visuals and framing and other wonderful things like that, which sort of is a great transition from our Able City talk to that. So in just a minute, we'll have Doug Trumbull and that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
All right, we'll be back in 5. See you in a few minutes, folks. Thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne.
Unmute my mic.
We can see you and hear you, Doug.
Good. Just a little test. We're trying a crazy experiment here to push Zoom to its maximum extremes.
Oh, we
I
would
love
expect,
your
we would
background.
expect nonetheless.
I love your background, Doug.
Cool. Thank you. See, if you get, just don't block my keyboard.
I was channeling you this morning because I'm set in my basement. I have two lights here. I was thinking, what would Douglas Trumbull do here? So I was trying to get my best web camera and set my key and fill light here in the basement and take it one step further.
Well, we've gone to extremes here. I've got my pal Paul Lacombe here with me. He's right here. And he's going to reach in, hopefully imperceptibly, and push a couple of my keys to keep switching modes
Okay.
between screen share and videos and stuff. That's a pretty complicated show.
Wow. Okay, cool. We've got just a few minutes and we'll be live.
Okay.
Doug, are you going to do a screen share?
Yeah.
Okay, I've set it so you guys can do that.
Should we do a little test of it first?
Sure, if you want.
Well, so tell me what I'm going to do here, pal. Paul. Okay. So what I've got is a Keynote running in the background.
Yep, that's working correctly. We're
so
seeing
you're
a
seeing that?
screenshot. Yep.
You're
Yep,
seeing
there we go.
that. You're seeing that. And then that. And then this is a video, which I should push this key. Hey, space bar to play it.
Yeah.
See if you're getting the sound.
Don't hear the sound. You might need to check.
Not getting sound.
Yeah, I'm hearing it.
There's a setting in the sharing options. When you go to share the screen, it gives you a choice about sharing audio.
There's a choice in the screen for sharing audio.
I think it's
Oh.
when you first hit the share button, the share
Yeah,
screen.
stop
There's
and
a
start again.
yeah, hit stop share and then start again. And just before you start, I think it's at the bottom of that sharing window.
Hi, Doug.
Hi. It's at the bottom of the sharing window.
You look fantastic. Oh my gosh.
Did it
That
all
is
for
so
you,
good.
darling.
Oh, that almost makes me excited to be virtual.
There's some
Hi,
opening
Doug, how are
thing
ya?
From the Berkshire
Okay.
Film Festival, that's gonna start in a couple of minutes. I saw
Doug, nice
Dave.
to see you.
Okay, good. So you're hearing the sound now?
Yes, now we're hearing it.
Okay,
So
good.
this is Doug's, okay. This is a shared screen that Doug's gonna show. Is that what I'm looking at?
Yeah, we're just testing it, make sure it's working.
Perfect. Okay, great. So fabulous. Look at, we're all clamoring to get in. I need to, oh well, whatever.
Okay.
Ms. Vickery, you ought to tilt your camera down a bit so you're not just at the bottom of the frame.
Oh, okay, like that, or should I turn it sideways?
Sideways is always even better if you want to do that.
Doug, do you want to
Look, she looks so much better.
keep your screen sharing on, or you want to stop it for a bit? Either way is fine.
Oh
Whatever you
my
want to do.
God.
Okay, I'll just leave it. I don't want to
Okay,
mess with it.
I
sounds like a
don't
plan.
know how you put up with me all these years, Doug.
Hey,
It's
Kelly,
just
there's a,
embarrassing.
I'll send you a rubber band so you can, tie your phones together and make a.
Yeah, just, I think we're going on 12 years on that joke and it just never gets old, does it?
Never gets old.
Right.
No, it just doesn't. Mm-mm. Never gets old. Oh, boy. That's just between us.
Yes, it is.
That was such a fun panel, that first one.
Yeah, it was great. Doing well.
Yeah, really,
Cool.
really interesting, funny. That was great. Of course, I didn't understand anything from the last one, but that's because of it's technical.
Did you send me Barbara's email?
Oh no, ask Carolyn for it. I mean, she has a few different ones, so I just don't know which one. Yeah.
Okay, Kelly, this is going to get kind of technical, and I want you not to tune out.
All right.
You got me for the full hour. I'm not tuning out. And
Okay.
I like, you know how I like visual things, so that's going to work for me.
Well, this looks like it's gonna be a great one. Well, I think we're starting up. We're starting up again.
Yep, 110 on the dot.
Yeah, we're starting again.
Well, I hope everyone's back, and because here's a big treat. We're here with Douglas Trumbull, who's a great visionary visual effects artist and filmmaker. And Doug will key into what we're going to talk about this morning. He's got a great presentation set up. And I think, again, it connects with what we're talking about in terms of capturing a great image for your film and helping the image sell your story. Doug, if you want to take it over, take it away.
Okay, well, we're doing a technical experiment today to combine Zoom with Keynote. So that's been a little bit of a trepidation here. And in the process of doing that, I've lost my presenter notes. So everything you hear me say, I'm going to be vamping. To start off with, I just wanted to say that to me, everything in a movie is an illusion to some degree. It doesn't matter whether you're going on location or you're going to build a set or you're going to have a prop or you're going to have wardrobe or set dressing or actors saying lines or cars of different periods. Everything in a movie is an illusion. And that's kind of the philosophy that I abide by. And that's the kind of thing that I wanted to instill in this presentation today is how you make illusions that serve the story. So they're not noticeable, hopefully. They shouldn't stand out. They should just be there to serve the story. I've got to fly. Okay. So what you're seeing in the background behind me is a still photograph of the centrifuge set in 2001: A Space Odyssey. And I'm going to change it. So did it just change? So this is another still photograph from 2001: A Space Odyssey. And now I'm going to change it again. And this is a computer generated image of the same set created by a friend of mine, Darren Doctorman, out in LA, who does a lot of science fiction movies and visual effects. And what we've been experimenting with is the idea that we can now make photorealistic environments of entire scenes or entire sets or entire locations and put you into them with green screen or other techniques. Just like this. This is a green screen behind me. I could switch it on and off, but I'm not going to do that. So it's leading to what I wanted to give you a little history on of where I came from in this industry, because my first film was this movie, working with Stanley Kubrick. And at this very time, we're developing a documentary about the making of 2001 called Mysterious Masterpiece, because we've raised the question now of why is this movie still showing, 53 years later. And I'll show you a little teaser that we made 12 years ago that started this process. And then we had to set the project aside because of rights issues with Warner Brothers, but we're picking it up again. And I'll show you this little thing, which has in it a bunch of green screen comps that we did 12 years ago in our garage.
Good afternoon, Hal.
Good afternoon.
How's everything been going after all these 40 years?
Everything is going extremely well.
Dave Larson and I are working on a documentary about the making of the movie. We've got all these photographs, just incredible stuff of behind the scenes production.
May I see them?
Sure. Like there's an early moon watcher.
Can you hold it a bit closer?
Sure, hold on. There's an early design for the Discovery spacecraft. Kubrick at the Super Panavision Cinerama camera. Kubrick and Clark. As you know, Dave Larson's been researching the making of 2001 for over 9 years. He's interviewed over 190 people associated with the film in many ways. We have the transcripts of those interviews. So those transcripts are now guiding us in a whole new series of interviews that we will shoot in high definition. Dave has found in the Kubrick archives beautiful, very large format Ektachrome transparencies of every major set in the movie. They're like they were shot yesterday. They are not degraded, they're not faded. They're in beautiful condition, and you're seeing some of them right now. And we're going to shoot every interview of at least 40, 45 people. All of the interviews will be shot with a green screen like this so that we can put images behind the interviewee. We hope to use widescreen, a 2:1 aspect ratio, letterbox style, which is appropriate for the movie. Some special green screen shooting that we're going to do where Keir DeLay, Gary Lockwood, myself, Dan Richter, we can all walk right into the 2001 sets and actually indicate to the viewer what's going on, why this is here, why that was the way it was. I think it's going to be a really interesting and novel approach to a documentary about the making of a movie that is so far back in history.
It'd be tricky.
Yeah.
We'd have to cut his higher brain functions.
Well, that's far safer than allowing hell to continue.
We think it's going to be a documentary that really tells the story of the making of 2001. Not just the technical story, but the human story, the personal story, the experiences of people who interacted with Kubrick, that is really true to the style and the look of 2001: A Space Odyssey, which still holds up today.
Okay, so Paul, do we need to do anything to put me down in the corner of the frame? I'm not sure how we do that. So I'm going to talk about the challenges we faced making 2001. The movie was nothing you could go and find and shoot anywhere. You had to build everything. So we had to build all the stars, the planets, and the moons. Stanley wanted to go to these African landscapes to create the Anthropithecus tribes that were trying to survive on the earth, and there's a big intervention by aliens. And we did tons of the movie in animation, which means that we used an Oxbury animation stand, 65mm camera, and to shoot all the stars and planets and elements for a lot of these shots are animated, shot one frame at a time. Miniatures were shot continuously, which means there's no motion blur. Kubrick explored the idea of shooting all the miniatures with strobe lights, which looked animated. It was unacceptable. So we shot them all with continuous motion control. The camera's moving very slowly. The exposures of the lens to the film were sometimes several seconds per frame in order to include a little bit of natural blur. So we had to build motion control systems, which I'll describe a little bit later. And Kubrick was very adamant about quality control throughout this whole movie and didn't like the loss of quality that would happen when you'd use what's called a dupe neg or a dupe internegative, because the resultant next iteration would be 3 steps away from the original, and you'd get a buildup of grain, a buildup of contrast, and a loss of resolution. So we opted for yellow, cyan, magenta film elements that were black and white, high resolution, fine film grain for the yellow, cyan, magenta, which were then printed BiPAC in the camera, a piece of film and a piece of negative printed in the camera to duplicate the films. We found out right away that painted backdrops were not good enough, and we had to do photographic, high quality backdrops for everything. And this led to this massive use of front projection in the movie. And I'll describe what front projection is. after this little sequence.
It's been about 7 or 8 months since you were here last, wasn't it?
Well, let's see, last June. Yeah, about 8 months.
Suppose you saw the work on the new section when you came in.
Hey, you're coming along great, huh?
Yeah, it's fine.
Oh, wait a minute. I gotta make a couple of phone calls. You go on ahead in the restaurant. I'll meet you there. Huh?
Right.
I'm going to use my cursor here to indicate certain things of interest in scenes as I show them. So this is a painted backdrop of the Earth just outside this set. I'll show you the backdrop in a moment. Can you see my cursor? Is that working? Okay.
Elena.
So here it is again,
Hey,
outside the window.
Surprised to meet you here. You're looking wonderful. Thank you.
And the problem here is that this rotating backdrop is two-dimensional. It's not very detailed. It's not really photorealistic. It was unsatisfactory, and it led to us having to find other solutions for the movie throughout the movie, which would be much more detailed. So here's the painted backdrop on the right. It's right here, and with a black edge around it, and it's being looked at through this window here in the set. So this is the set for the space station set, Space Station 5. You all seeing this okay?
Yes.
So here's Stanley Kubrick inside the set with his typical Polaroid camera. Virtually everything in the movie was photographed with Polaroid cameras to check the shots and exposure. And for the Dawn of Man sequence, which dominates the whole first large 15 or so minutes of the movie, was using what's called front projection. I'm going to try to explain that to you because it's the predecessor to what we now use as green screen, which I'm using to be in this set. So here's a drawing of Namibia for the Dawn of Man sequence, just a very early sketch. And it says on the way to the water hole, coming up slope to the water. So these are all just sketches leading to the development of the whole system to do this sequence. This is a tabletop model with little cutouts of the guys, shot with certain lenses. And this area up here, you can see my cursor, that's where the screen is going to be. So there's going to be projected images up here of Namibia. They're going to be shot on location. This is the actual screen with no projection on it. And there's a foreground set. And here's some of the lights off to the side. And the ceiling of the set was a very complicated lighting system too. Now, I'm going to show you the front projection machine in a moment, which was this hugely cumbersome device that weighed a ton. And it was so difficult to move the rig that we moved the set instead. So you see this turntable here. You see a wheel right down here. You see this turntable. This is a 90-foot diameter turntable on which all these sets are being built. You see them starting to be mocked up here. Here's another wider shot. The turntable is a little bit more finished and the rocks are starting to take shape. And this image here was just a first test of a 8x10 Ektachrome transparency of a London scene outside the studio. This is a horrible drawing. It's the only one we have of the reflective products division of 3M, Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing. And you can understand how this all works, because if you're driving your car at night and you see markers along the side of the road, or markers actually in the road that shine brightly as a result of your headlights, that's called retroreflective. And what that is on this surface here are billions of tiny glass beads, spherical glass beads embedded in plastic as small as grains of sand. And the optical effect of these beads is that no matter where you shine light onto them, the light gets bounced back directly to the source, no matter where you are. The light goes from a source, hits the screen, and bounces right back to wherever you're projecting from. So this was used to create enough brightness on the screen on the set. And another part of that explanation is that the effectiveness or the efficiency of the screen is 200 times brighter than if the same image fell on a piece of white paint or a piece of white paper, or even on a set or on a prop or on a character in the foreground. It's so dim where it shines on anything else, it doesn't show up at all, even though it's shining on everything in the foreground. So this is this machine. This is an early drawing of the front projection machine. It changed dramatically after this drawing, but here's the 65mm camera. It's on a head, and the supposed axis of rotation of the camera is right here at what's called the nodal point. And then the projector is projecting downward into a mirror at 45 degrees. And it's at exactly the same distance from the screen as the camera lens is. They're exactly aligned. So that when people cast their shadow on the screen, actors in the foreground cast a shadow, they fill their own shadow perfectly. You don't see an outline or a shadow or anything. So this is the idea of a camera, a projector, this beam splitter, which is a 45%, a 90% silver glass mirror. It's half transparent and half reflective. So the image coming out of the projector hits the mirror and bounces out toward the set. The image from the set bounces back and comes back through the mirror to the camera lens. So I hope you're all with me on this, and I'm going to explain it a little bit more later as we go on. But this was what we had to do in order to enable 2001, 53 years ago. This is the actual machine. This looks like something out of the 1920s. It's a huge carbon arc light source. There's a little box here with condensing lenses. There's a bellows here, like in an old Deerdorf 8x10 camera. There's a lens here. There's the mirror right here, mounted in a frame, and the camera is behind the mirror. They're not actually lined up in this photograph, but it doesn't matter. But this whole gizmo weighed about a ton. Here's looking at it from behind. The projector lens is here. The camera lens is over here. The beam splitter is here. And this is just a 35mm camera for testing, but this is just another angle on that rig. Now, when Kubrick was shooting here, he was such a stickler for quality that he wanted to make sure that the projected image was absolutely in focus on the screen. So he watched it in binoculars and set the focus himself on the projector. We had to go to Namibia for the location scout and the shooting to shoot 8x10 transparencies, which were used. The original transparency shot in Namibia were projected in the projector. So here's the background. Here's a nice afternoon sunset being projected. It's 8x10 across here. And here's the foreground set, and here's the actors in their ape costumes. So I'm going to show you a little sequence from Dawn of Man. Cut very short, so you don't have to go through the whole thing. But you'll see examples of shots, and I might even stop on a shot or two and show you where the edges are. Oh, wait a minute. I screwed up. Let me start that again. So the edge is right along here. That's a foreground set. Here's the actors in the foreground set. This is the edge of the foreground set. I just can't stop. The only way I can stop it is to do this. So this is all foreground set. And the edge to the screen is right there. Dang, I keep doing this wrong. Let me go back. Sorry. Try to find myself. Okay, I was going through this with you. Here's the monolith now shows up, and these guys are going to get the education of their lifetimes to teach them how to use bones as weapons. So this is actor Dan Richter, who plays the role of Moonwatcher, who is the lead Australopithecus. So this moment right here was shot outdoors with a real sky. This incredible sky came by one day, and Kubrick wanted these high-speed shots, which were shot at about 72 frames a second, to really get a really good slow-mo effect. But anyway, this is all on a platform outdoors, just outside the stage. So another machine that had to be built by Wally Vevers, who was the head of all the technical engineering on the movie, was called the Sausage Factory, because we were so frustrated at how slow the production was, and we wanted to crank out many more shots per day than we were. And so Wally invented this crazy machine, which was really the first fully realized, what I would call a motion control system, and I'll try to explain how that works. So here's an illustration of it. What you've got here is a camera on a track that can move forward and back to a big sheet of glass. And on this sheet of glass is a photograph, a two-dimensional color or black and white photograph of a miniature. And behind that, we can position this little projector to project 70 millimeter or 35 millimeter images into the windows of the spacecraft. So that's one part about it. This is the control system over here, very symbolically represented. And there was a really clever technique in order to shoot exposure after exposure after exposure that are absolutely identical in camera position. So the camera could pan and tilt and move in and out and change focus automatically during any shot or any composite. And on the top of the camera is what is called a bipack magazine. So one of these yellow, cyan, or magenta masters could be in one magazine, and the original negative could be in the other magazine. And they could shoot this over and over and over and composite many different pieces of film onto one new original negative. So today we don't have to do that. We can do it instantaneously with green screen. So this is what the machinery looked like at the time. This is the camera here. This is the bipack magazine up here. These are the motors. One motor operating pan, another motor here operating tilt, another motor behind you can't see operating focus, and a motor here operating the frames going by in the camera. And this machine over here, which I'll show you another picture of, synchronized everything. Excuse me, there's the camera. This is the synchronizing machine of what was called the Sausage Factory. It's one big main motor driving out through shafts to many different things called Selson motors, which are here. These Selson motors, Selson means self-synchronizing. And so for each motor here, there would be a corresponding motor on the camera rig, which is here. So these are Selson motors on the camera rig too. There's one right there. There's one back there for focus. There's one there for pan and tilt. And that would synchronize everything so that every exposure had exactly the same motion. And that's one of the reasons why everything in 2001 moves continuously and smoothly. It doesn't slow down, it doesn't speed up, it doesn't change speed ever. So the camera is on this track and it's looking at a big sheet of glass onto which artwork is pasted. These are the bipack magazines. You know, one magazine has the yellow or the cyan or the magenta film running down through here into the camera, and the bipack magazine would have one piece of YCM in front of the original negative, and they would be printed in a sandwich in the camera by multiple exposures. This is what a bipack magazine looks like inside. None of you are ever going to have to do this, and none of you are ever going to want to do this. It was the most time-consuming, laborious process known to man, but it's how the whole movie was made. So I'm going to show you a sequence that gives you some examples of things. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, so what's going on right here is this Aries is a flat two-dimensional photograph on a sheet of glass. And behind it, in the windows, are being projected 3 different movies shot inside the set of the interior set. So people are moving around in the set. This background of the lunar terrain and the earth in the background were all shot by me in the animation department. And all these images are being sandwiched together inside the camera on the sausage factory. Dang, I keep doing this, stupid mistake. Sorry. So you see the idea that this is all just a two-dimensional photograph on a piece of glass. So this is another example of Kubrick just being clever to try to make life simpler. This shot, looking out the windows of the Ares spacecraft, have the pilot and co-pilot very carefully positioned so their heads are not in the window frame, which would require a traveling mat to make it impossible to superimpose this background. So that was just staged that way. So this out the window is another miniature and a big lunar terrain shot separately and then sandwiched together inside the sausage factory. Then there are these readouts that are all over the movie. I did all these readouts in 35mm film and then rear projected with 16mm projectors into the set. We had no computers, no computer displays of any kind in the movie. So this is another example of front projection. This is the identical technique we used for the Dawn of Man sequence. We built a foreground set that looked like lunar rock and put the miniature outside on a 8x10 flat photograph and projected it onto the screen on the same set as the Dawn of Man was shot. So this little guy here, sorry, I'm jumping around. So the little guy up here is animated as well, same technique. We'll go past that. And I'm now going to jump out of 2001. I can't spend all my time talking about 2001. I'm going to talk a little bit about my first film, which was enabled by my understanding of how front projection worked. And I had to take everything that Stanley Kubrick had done on 2001 and miniaturize it and simplify it and make it so it worked really fast and the same kind of quality. So I took that whole rig that Stanley had designed and Tom Howard had built and miniaturized it into this device, which was a projector with a bulb in it from a slide projector, a projector lens, a 35mm Airflex camera, a beam splitter lens here. And this whole thing was so small and lightweight, it could go on a normal camera head. So this is another view of the same projector that I just shot yesterday. I've still got it here. So this is the box, which has all the projection optics in it, projector lens, the beam splitter, and a platform to mount an Airflex 2C camera on. This is inside the projector. These are the condensing optics. This is a light bulb from a standard slide projector of the day. We don't do slide projectors anymore. Going through various condenser optics to focus the light through a plate that would be over here, a 4x5 plate. I scaled everything down from 2001 to 4x5 instead of 8x10 because I was only shooting 35mm film and not 70mm. So this is what it looks like inside this machine. And I had some really wonderful optical designers working with me and an engineer building this machine with me. And we shot silent running on an old aircraft carrier. And in the day we made silent running, we put the deal together in about 1970. And this is a low budget movie made It was financed by Universal Studios as though it were an independent production. And we had to make this movie for under $1 million. We actually failed. It went over a budget a little bit, but it was roughly $1 million plus to make this movie. And so it required a lot of ingenuity and a lot of cleverness to try to create some of the production values of 2001 for a much lower budget. So while Kubrick had a 90-foot wide screen, I had a 45-foot wide screen, which is covered with a tarp right here. It's on this frame in an airplane hangar at the Van Nuys Airport. We rented all these plants from a local nursery and borrowed some of these things from painting companies for, these are used for scaffolding around buildings when they're painting them or resurfacing them or doing stucco or whatever. And the drones in Silent Running were all performed by young actors and actresses. They were bilateral amputees with no legs. And they were really wonderful performers. And it's part of the thing that really makes the movie magical, because it's very hard to figure out that there's people inside these robot outfits. And this was what sparked George Lucas to do R2-D2. This is the miniature construction. My friend Wayne Smith up here, working on the spaceship for the movie, which was called the Valley Forge, which was the same name as the actual aircraft carrier that we rented from the Navy for about $1,000 a week. An entire aircraft carrier for $1,000 a week, which we converted into our sets. This was the work on the geodesic domes on a plexiglass dome, and then detailing it out, making it a little bit larger, making a dome with a Buckminster Fuller type structure to it. And this is photographed inside the dome in order to make 4x5 projection plates that would go inside the front projection machine. So this was a way of shooting a lot of shots really fast and very inexpensively on a low budget. So I encourage you all to think that way. As you make your films, there's no limit to how far you can go, because there's the new technologies now available with camera tracking and green screen, make all this stuff so easy. And don't get daunted by it. This is one of the plates. This is a very badly exposed one of Saturn outside the dome. Here's a little sequence with Bruce Dern, just to show you a sequence of shots using the front projection machine. So right behind him up here, you're going to see, sorry, I can't seem to be able to do both these at once.
Pocket here.
Why is this not playing?
Some goodies.
So it's a sequence of shots showing you front projection throughout the movie. I don't know what's wrong with this, sorry. I'm gonna just take my cursor out of there and it'll stay away.
That's good.
I'm sorry. So you can see that this image out here seems to be a natural part of the set and the scene. It doesn't look synthetic, it doesn't look fake. And I'm just going to try to sleuth through here. Just a little shot on the animation stand. And there's another shot of Bruce in front of a projected image. The projected image seems to be way far away and naturally in the scene. Sorry, this thing is just not playing smoothly. Now here's another little scene we shot inside where a window opens up and reveals the stars outside in the kitchen scene, using the same front projection machine and a little piece of retroreflective material about a foot behind the sliding door. No, it's just not going to play, so I'm going to sleuth through it. So now we're going to get to the spacecraft. All of these shots were done by my friend John Dykstra, who is now a very well acclaimed visual effects supervisor in Hollywood. So you see the domes here, the entire ship, stars, everything in camera using front projection. There's no opticals or any post-production on these shots. So the music seems to have gone away. I'm sorry, I'll just keep slewing through. There's a lot of shots, including the drones, where in a shot like this is a real foreground full-scale set up to about here, that line. And then behind them, sorry, trying to make this right. This is part of the world of experimentation. So sorry to subject it to it, but there's shots and shots and shots that are the miniature in front of a screen using front projection to make composites that are actually in camera with no further post-production work or compositing necessary to create this movie, including this big sequence where Bruce goes through Saturn's rings. It's really quite a beautiful scene. Using these clouds here are slit scan, which was a derivation of the streak photography technique I developed for the Stargate. So here's your little drones trying to get away. This one gets stuck and he gets ripped off. Can't run it, won't run, sorry. So I'm just gonna jump past this. I don't know why it's not playing. His little foot was stuck. That's why he got ripped off, etc. Just got to see the movie. So now we're in this world of green screen or blue screen to do all this stuff so inexpensively and so simply that I just urge you to really seriously consider it. And this is my friend Paula Combs' video from several years ago of stuff at National Association of Broadcasters convention, just showing some things that I'll try to slew through this and just stop to explain what's going on. This is Paul's company, Unreal, and Paul is here helping me do this show today. So here we have a shot of a woman with a glass table set, very similar to what you'd see on CNN or MSNBC for news, and carrying the density of the glass and reflections off the glass during a composite is extremely tricky, but very doable with Ultimat. Ultimat is a blue screen and green screen matte generating technique so that you can superimpose her into a virtual set. This is the virtual set. This is entirely synthetic. It's very simple, but it gives you an idea of what you can do for a news show or something. So that's the matte. And there she is on the scene again. And then she's going to go down here and show you how she's carrying a shadow. It's the carrying of the shadow that really embeds her in the scene. Shadow from her feet, her shadow cast on the floor, and the shadow cast by her hands. The shadow is being carried through Ultimat onto the virtual set. It's not a real floor or anything. That's her shadow. That's what puts her into the scene. Yeah, now we're going to take it out, take the shadow out. And here's the actual setup on the stage. You see her reaching off the edge there, that there's a garbage mat there that's a line right about there that she can't cross without being revealed as artifice, but it's just a way of allowing you to extend this blue all the way across here so that you don't see any of this guy or any of this crap in the shot. It's called the garbage mat. Okay. That's it. So I just wanted to open it up for questions about, where we are in, yeah, where we are today. Because I just try to make this show for young, enthusiastic filmmakers who are learning their way through the industry, whether you're making feature documentaries or feature film, dramatic films, that you shouldn't be afraid of doing some kind of illusion if it's going to serve your movie or add to the expanse of what the movie wants to seem to be. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to talk about them at length.
Well, I have one quick one, Doug, and then we'll get on to the rest of the filmmakers. Basically, what you were doing back then with 2001 onto silent running and such, now is applicable. I mean, the current trend is virtual production that's being used on The Mandalorian and shows like that. It's also, I've seen it behind the scenes for a couple of companies, but they've even used it on Ugly Betty and so on, using blue screen and green screen virtual backgrounds and such. For the layman, for the regular folks who don't have access to a wonderful workshop like yours, or like the folks there at ILM and so on, what is accessible for us? I mean, I know they're using LED screens and so on. Is that a preferable situation to a blue screen, green screen back situation combined with the like something like the Unreal Engine? How does that work for regular folks like us, filmmakers like us?
Well, first of all, everything you need to do something like this is actually almost embedded in Zoom. That's what we're using right now. This mat is all being done in Zoom. And the stage that we're on right now, let me try to move this around a little bit, is let's go back so you can see. You could fit this in your garage.
Right. Wow.
Can you take the key off or show the green? Yeah, and put the house lights up. So we're just in a big room. And how do we turn the key off? I've got to go into the settings in the Zoom. Hold on. Where are they? Backgrounds and filters. Okay, I'm going to turn this off. So I'm going to just give you none. So now you see that I'm on a green screen. You see?
Yes.
So this is just a psych on our stage. This psych fits in here's Paul Lacombe over here and Julia. This fits in his garage where it was first set up. So all great things come from garages. I mean, it's true. Microsoft came from a garage. Adobe came from a garage. You name it. It all comes from a garage of somebody who has no money but has a garage, who goes in and sets up a little studio or lab to figure something out. So that's that.
That's great. So basically, the point of all this is basically using these techniques to capture the best image possible and tell the story, best story possible. And it's all illusion in the end.
Yeah.
Right.
And the trick of the illusion, it's really important that you understand a little bit about photography and a little bit about painting. Because when you're going to do any kind of illusion of putting like me in front of that, it's kind of easy right here because it's a very abstract set that's circular. But you want to put the horizon line at the right height in the shot. You want the perspective to be correct. You want to match the focal length of the lens that you shot the background with the focal length of the lens you're going to shoot the foreground with. Then you want to match the lighting. So there's several lights here on the stage that are trying to mimic the source that's these curved sources of light here. I can't do both hands at once, but there's sources of light in the image behind me that need to be matched on me so it looks like I'm in it. It's not very hard to do. It's not complicated. And I urge you all to, take the opportunity to kind of get your feet wet and think about, well, what's your next movie? Because, we're in this world where Netflix and Amazon and Disney Plus and all the streaming services are trying to crank out as much content as they possibly can at as low a cost as they possibly can. It was spoken about earlier with Barbara Koppel and her team about how the costs are being crushed down. Do the music for less, do the sound for less, do the editing for less, do it in shorter period of time. That's the world we're living in. And so the challenge is, how do you increase production value and decrease costs at the same time? And I'm a miniature guy. I love miniatures a lot. I used to build model kits when I was a kid. So there's plenty of reference material that I have about doing that and making miniatures that are photorealistic. And in 2001, it's filled with miniatures that are photorealistic. Not very hard. You just have to light them carefully, make them move gracefully. And sometimes it requires motors and computers and stuff to do that. And the whole world that we started on with, which I showed you earlier with what we call the sausage factory, has now been distilled down into very tiny components and automated robotic cameras. I could even get Paul, you could just hand me one of your robotic heads. Just take the cables off of it. Take this one right here and I'll show it. This is a product from Panasonic. We call it a Ptz Head Zoom. So this is the latest. Got to be a little bit lower. Can you just take it off here? It's bolted. All right, we'll slide it down. Is this still hooked to your controllers?
No.
Yes?
Yeah.
Well, why don't you make it move around? So this is a 4K camera with a really good zoom lens in it. It's robotically controlled. And there you go, that's cool.
Wow. So
this is sending out data to a computer that can then move the background exactly the same way, three-dimensionally, in 3D space, panning, tilting, and zooming all at once, so that you can do any camera move you want to do in your illusion. That's what's so important about all this stuff, is this world of robotics is here now. It's relatively inexpensive. There's new equipment coming online every day, so make it possible for you to make your movie.
And again, it's not about science fiction films only, it's anything.
No, anything, doesn't matter, anything. I was going to show a couple of things out of Brainstorm, but I felt I was going to run out of time, where like we had, pretty conventional sets, and some conundrums came up because all of our sets were built in LA at MGM Studios. Our locations were on location in North Carolina at Research Triangle Park in this big laboratory. So I would go and shoot plates, what they're called plates, just still photographs of what the scene would be out the window of a laboratory in the building. We'd bring that photograph back and project it using the same front projection machine I showed you earlier from out the window of a room in the hotel or in the laboratory in several scenes. You would never notice them in the movie. They just linked everything together. They were inexpensive to do, didn't slow production down at all. It just took some planning to make sure I shot the still that I needed for that particular scene, thinking of it in advance and being ready. So anything that you're going to come up against, which is like that, is a good example of simple augmentations of your movie that increase scope and increase production value. Like if you're inside a set that happens to have a window and you want to convince the audience that the window is looking out over the ocean at some exotic location in South America, you can do that if you have a photograph or a video. Like, for example, the whole front projection thing I told you about, where we started with 8x10 plates for 2001. We migrated down to 4x5 plates for silent running Now, that could all be done with a video projector if you want to use front projection. But you're not going to use front projection because it's so much easier just to have a green screen back there and replace the green with some image and adjust the color and the brightness and the perspective and make sure the horizon line's in the right place. And you'll have a really perfectly seamless composite that looks believable and photorealistic.
Well, to that point, in terms of, and this is a point from our earlier conversations as well with the other panelists, is planning a big part of this? Meaning, I know people
Absolutely.
who do dramas tend to not want to do storyboards and such, but back in the day, you know, Hitchcock and others have planned things out, and they've used these same techniques even back in the day. So is it beneficial for a filmmaker that's planning to try to expand the scope of their image to suggest they're in another country? So on, even people like you and like us, is it better to sit down with someone and starting to plot those shots out so you know what should be real on set and what should be virtual later?
Yes, you have to do it. I think you have to do it. If you don't plan it, it is never going to happen. You can't express it to anybody else. You can't convey it to someone to help you with some technique or some miniature or some location shoot or something. But yes, planning is everything and storyboarding is everything. Storyboarding shots can be really crude. And I showed you some from the Dawn of Man sequence. Those are extremely crude kind of felt tip marker drawings that are perfectly adequate to indicate that, oh, there's a scene. There's the desert, there's the horizon line, there's a bunch of ape guys in the foreground, and just start planning how to actually build it.
We've got a few minutes left. If there are any questions from our audience, raise a hand. I'm going to see if I can see here. If not, I can ask another question. Anyone? No? Okay, I'll geek out and ask one more question. So this new technology that they're selling lately, the Unreal Engine, which is basically software originating with gaming that allows you, as you're mentioning, to sort of slave the real camera to a virtual camera and make the backgrounds blend. Again, from your experience, I'm sure you've done a lot of experimentation in that direction. Does it mean anything whether or not you use that particular software, or in terms of green screen and blue screen versus the LEDs? I think I mentioned that before. Is there advantage of one of the other? I've talked to some that said LEDs are actually a pain in the ass, and besides being so expensive. What are your thoughts on that quickly?
Well, the LED thing is getting a lot of buzz because it basically replaces the front projection screen with an LED, light emitting diode array, which is like a gigantic television. And if it's got enough clarity to it and enough pixels to it and enough color to it, it can be a photorealistic image, but it is two-dimensional. And a lot of knowledge is being gained now because they've been using it extensively on The Mandalorian and other shows and commercials, and finding out that, well, if the camera is not looking flat at it, but the camera really wants to look at somebody over here, then the screen behind it is oblique and the composite doesn't work all that great. So it's not a panacea, it's not a magic silver bullet, but it has very useful purposes if you plan ahead what all your shots are going to be. So you know what foreground set pieces you need to make it work. If you have a problem with something off to the edge of the screen not working quite right, you can move around and not have to see that. Just be clever. I've seen LED screens now that are hemispherical, which means you could pan 180 degrees and tilt up and down inside the composite. And it could be very, very effective. So I haven't seen that done yet, but I know people who are working on it. And I also know that this whole technology of these robotic cameras are becoming completely electronically tied in to game engines. So the game engine gets data from this camera. You're looking at the view from the camera through a viewfinder, but if the camera pans right, the game engine pans right. If the camera moves in, the game engine moves in. It's basically taking data from here instead of from your joystick on your game, and allowing you to be moving around inside a synthetic environment that is photorealistic. So that's like a come true for filmmakers today, is to get into this new space And it's being very, very rapidly developed all over the world. I talked to some very interesting people just yesterday about what's going on in France and England and Germany and New Zealand. This is the hot topic today, is the fact that you can do these amazing illusions. If I went back, it's kind of fun. Maybe I could find it here. I could get back in. I probably can't get back into my show because I've got the background plate of this very set from 2001, computer generated. And it's one of the things that we're actively working on right now, which is this documentary film, is going to allow us to enter into these sets as though they were today, not 53 years ago.
Right.
So if I want Tom Hanks to sit, over there in the background or down like I did, we can do that now. And I think that's going to create a whole new slant to documentaries because it's a hybrid between documentary and dramatic. I don't know where the line is going to be drawn, but I'm going to be very careful not to get too cute about it or do something that's too fancy or visual effectsy, because I want to be true to the movie. But to have an opportunity to sit down, there's a scene in 2001 where Gary Lockwood and Keir Delay are watching their iPads on the table. The movie was very prescient because it's an almost exact visualization of an iPad today. It was called an IBM ThinkPad in the movie. And they're watching a television show that was pre-recorded of them being interviewed by this guy from the BBC and also talking to Hal. Very interesting kind of time scene. Well, you could have George Lucas and Steven Spielberg sitting in those very same seats, talking to each other about that scene and using iPads.
Right.
That's a really interesting twist on bringing the past into the present.
Excellent. Well, thank you. We have one last question before we sign off. Joe Brown, I believe you had a question. If you're still there, Joe.
I'm here. Yeah, sorry. I just had a technical question. I'm just a geek. I saw that in one of the diagrams, the camera was a 65mm camera. And I guess I'm just, I'm familiar with IMAX being 70mm, and just why 65mm? Was there a particular reason?
Yeah.
Very
First of all, I'm going to correct you on one thing. Okay. You are not just a geek. You are a creative filmmaker that has technical skills.
Thank you.
Don't diminish that. Technical skills are very, very important to the fact that movies are a technical art form. This is not poetry. This is not opera. This is not literature. This is movies, which are by their very nature technical. So I urge anybody to not be afraid of technical challenges and learn as much as you can about them. But for the 70mm, it was much larger film than 35mm film. It was twice as wide. It was also one perforation higher. And the reason there was a difference between 65mm and 70mm is that the image area is actually identical between those two. The 70mm was the prints that went to the theaters, which had a little extra width in order to put magnetic soundtracks on the sides of the film outside the perforations. So there was 6-track magnetic sound on the 70mm prints. That's the only difference. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Come on, Kelly. I want a question from Kelly.
Oh my gosh, I had my mute on because I don't want to be making noises.
You can't mute me out, Kelly. You promised you would not do that.
I would never in a million years. I mean, I just think it's amazing that, this whole, that you're sitting what looks like in a spaceship and you're just in your studio downstairs.
Well, we're in the Berkshires
right?
of Western Massachusetts. We are not in the epicenter of anything. And this goes to show you that you can do world-class work in your garage or in your little studio or in a bigger building or whatever. And
well, that to me was the takeaway.
Yeah, that good. Because that's, I think that the future of anything often occurs separate from whatever that thing is. Because if you're embedded in Hollywood which I was for many, many years, I just felt like I was doing the same old, and I wanted to
Yeah.
refresh myself and think outside the box and think differently and unleash whatever crazed creative capabilities I had and try to do them without being yacked at in the ear by somebody else who was saying, no, we don't need that anymore or whatever.
Well, you certainly
You just wanna
accomplished that on
refresh.
steroids.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing.
Thank
And I'm
you.
sorry that we're not sharing that with everybody here, but we certainly got a slice of it. But I hope every filmmaker, the takeaway is, just do it, and to start small and think big and do it from your garage.
Yeah.
And technology is
That's
there.
really what I
and
wanted to. That's what I
That is-
wanted to
that is-
accomplish with today's show,
Yep.
was to just
Yep.
to
I mean,
try to explain something from a technical standpoint and say, you can do it. Don't be
Yep.
afraid of it. It's been done different ways before. There were old cameras, old equipment, no electronics, no computers, all done by hand in a way, which was 2001. And then silent running was kind of a step ahead for me, where I learned to direct and made my own film, but adapted things that I'd learned working with Kubrick. And every project can lead to another project, to another project, to another project.
Exactly.
And you learn
that
more
is
each
what all
time.
these, and that's what all these filmmakers on today have done. Their films are incredible films. And
Yeah.
to Joe's point, geeky or not, I mean, his film Operation Wolf Patrol is an incredible film. And he made something really powerful. It's a really powerful story, something I had never even heard of. I'm from Colorado. I mean, not that the film is there, but Joe's in Colorado. But I think that your words of wisdom and your expertise, and to sum it into something that is as straightforward and common sense as think small, but be creative, but you can do it from your garage. You don't need all that around you, all that noise. Just tell the story.
Yeah, exactly right. Thank you, Kelly.
Well, thank you. I mean, from the bottom of our hearts, what a treat to have you for an hour to ourselves.
Well, this is fun. This is really fun. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Doug.
Well, thank you so much, Doug.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Doug. This
See you
is
soon.
great, because ultimately, I think what I've heard a lot lately is people constantly in their reviews, CG, VFX, and so on. And we have to realize that these are part of the landscape of storytelling in cinema, and they've been around with us forever. And that's in science fiction and dramas and comedies. And we shouldn't be afraid of them. We shouldn't dismiss them. And this is what's great, and make use of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you so much, Doug.
Okay,
And,
Greg, thanks very much. I want to thanks to Paul Lacombe for helping set all this up and bringing his gear here today, and the green screen, which he brought from his garage. And it's all portable. All these lights are portable LED lights. Yeah, he sets it all, he puts it all in his van and drives around. The whole movie studio in a box. So it's happening right here in the Berkshires.
It's the best. Yeah. You've
All right.
inspired us, Doug. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay,
Once
thanks very
again.
much. See you
All
soon.
right.
Okay,
See you
thanks. Okay,
So,
bye-bye.
we can just move right into our next panel. And I think they're all with us. We're going to do showbiz, both sides of the lens. This with William Fichtner, Karen Allen, and Scott Cohen. And all three are obviously great on-screen talents, but they also are multifaceted and have all three toes in the realms of writing, producing, directing. They've been a part of all creative aspects of this field. And basically, getting into it, you folks, I suspect, as independent filmmakers, dealing with the bigger world, they're always saying, "Hey, you have to have a star in this piece. Yeah, there's a name or face we can market, and so on." And I think they sort of relegate you folks, sadly, to the point of, "Oh, you're automatons we put on the screen," as opposed to being super creative folks that have a lot to contribute. And obviously, there's a passion there that wells up to a point where you want to make your own films or produce your own films and so on. Let's just let you folks talk about the process. Are there benefits to being a known entity in terms of getting funds to make your passion projects? Are there benefits to being on screen in your own written, produced, or directed piece? How hard is it to get distributed later? Anyway, if you can just start off from there. Hello, good morning, or afternoon. God, time's passing.
Are they on?
I
Yes,
think, Ron, yes.
here.
I'm
So,
on.
Karen, why don't you just kick it off?
Hi, Karen.
Hi, Bill.
How are you?
Hi, Kelly.
You're on Kimmy's. It says
Hi,
you're
Christina.
Kimmy
How are
Figner.
you?
You become your better half. It says you're Kimmy Figner, Bill.
I'm on her computer. I'm actually on the
Oh.
East Coast. But I didn't take my computer with me. And I said to my wife, honey, you got to set your computer up for me.
Oh man, your wife, she is constantly having to work overtime.
I know. It's the story of her life.
You're worth it though.
It's very interesting what you were just saying, Greg, about, having, someone of a name or all that stuff that you hear that really, ultimately is true. And there is truth to all of that. And it can make a difference in that. But I certainly found in my case, when you're trying to make something, I don't really care about all that. All you want to do is make the thing that inspires you with the people that inspire you. And you're praying that that has some meaning to someone else.
Yep.
And you follow the road, or at least that's what I certainly did making this film called Brook. I followed the road as close as I could to what it was for me. And I tried to never veer off it. And I mean, at the end of the day, you only have that. And I certainly wasn't of a budget level where anybody was telling me, boy, if you don't have this particular person in it, you can't make this movie.
Right.
That wasn't my circumstance. So I fortunately just got to continue to steer the ship and convinced everyone the best way was my way.
Well, we all agree with that.
It's not easy.
It's not easy, Bill.
No, and also too, the bottom line is, at the end of the day, an awful lot of people only have a belief in what you do and want to partner up with you, but are willing to take the journey.
Well, just to piggyback off that, I was just watching Cold Brook with my wife. Really compelling, good stuff. So, in terms of the process, how did you go about? I want to do this. I want to write this. I want to direct it. I want to start it. What was your process, and how complicated was it for you to pull it off?
Well, for me personally, in 2001, I spent 5 months in Morocco working on this film called Black Hawk Down. And on that film, I met my best friend at 44 years old, Canadian actor Kim Coates. I really, the process began for me. I wasn't so inspired about the story. I was way more inspired about writing something that I could do with him. So it really began from there. And then I went to another good friend of mine named Kane DeVore, and I'm like, Kane, I got an idea. Let's help me write this and let's do it together. So it really was born out of that. And as it developed, and as years went by, what kept happening was that, in the original script, we all had kids that were 8 years old, and then finally they were like 18, and I'm like, I better make this movie before I got to write the kids out. They're getting too old. So honestly, I kid about that, but it is true. I mean, there came a point where I thought, I have to find a new level of seriousness with this. If this really has the deep meaning that I think it does for me. And there was a moment there where I had a light bulb moment 10 years into it where make this thing, Bill, or don't make it at all. And it really I just put it in another gear.
And was it hard raising funds to make it happen? Did people that you said very interesting, but the ones that actually said, no, this is very interesting, here's my check?
Yes, it's incredibly difficult. And I don't think that that's any different for anybody trying to make a film. One thing that I was very committed to was to shoot it in as much of it as I could in my hometown of Buffalo, New York, because I'm a huge fan of my hometown, and I knew and felt that my hometown would step to the plate. in many ways, and they did. And I said to my co-producers, listen, I can't put a monetary value on this, but it's gonna save us a tremendous amount of money. So please, let's not think about shooting it in Canada or any place else. I want to shoot it here. And even on a low budget film, we're gonna have a company move of 200 miles because there's a set piece that's part of the film, which is the cabin up on the hill, that actually is my college girlfriend's family farm. I've been hanging out at that place for 40 years, but I was like, there's no sense trying to find another cabin when the perfect one is already sitting there. So let's just try to wrap our head around creatively that we do it this way, shoot it here, take it to this place. What we'll get back for it and spirit and rhythm and life vibes, whatever you want to call it, will be worth it. Trust me on this. So that's what we did. And getting back to your original question about raising money and that, it's incredibly difficult. I happen to have, with my co-producers, we happen to get a lot of people that really had no experience in the film business before that wanted to be a part of it. So one side of that coin is really cool because they're happy to be a part of a movie making experience. The flip side of it that is not so easy is that, you know, when you try to sell the film and to do all of that good stuff, and, you know, it was difficult for them because, you know, a lot of people I think that invested in the film were like, wait a minute, it's not like 7-Eleven, you know, you sell so many big gulps and then you just count it up. Well, it's a little bit different, but we kind of explained that from the beginning. So that was a little challenging to take everybody's hand and walk them through it. And I was glad to walk them through it because I was still so grateful. I could not have made the film without everybody that stepped to the plate. So it's not an easy journey before or after.
Well, speaking of not so easy journeys, especially because she made a short film in her creative endeavors. Karen, how was it with a tree, a cloud, rock and a cloud? How did that? What inspired you to want to make that, and what was your process about going about making it?
Well, it was inspired really by first by the story itself and by Carson McCullers' writing in general. I've always been this huge fan of hers, and this particular story was a story I read when I was 20 years old, 19 years old, and I fell in love with the story, and then it just stayed with me over the years. I couldn't quite ever get this story out of my mind, and I always somehow thought I would do something with this story. I at one point was going to put it on stage with another, as a short play with another short piece, and then it came to this moment where I had a producer I had worked with, mostly in the theater, who was saying to me, why aren't you